This is just a quick overview of the vocabulary and content area presentation you'll be working through this week. I wanted to take you through it just to highlight the areas you want to look at. We'll start with our story of the week. And our story this week is an informational picture book, which is a nonfiction text. And this is our first nonfiction text of the semester. And it looks like a fiction text if you check it out, but it's an awesome book. It's called Hippos Are Huge by Jonathan London. Listen to the story and brainstorm how to use that across the curriculum. We have our answers showcased here. At the top, we have a link to lesson plan ideas for this story and also a link to the author and illustrator's website. And then I've included titles that you could use to create a text set for a hippopotamus theme. There are both nonfiction and fiction text here, as well as some poetry. Remember, check your answers here before you Dropbox them. Read through our weekly message. This week we have 2 journals, and that's a bit different. What I want you to do is make sure you check out those journal questions again, write them down, and then as we work through the presentation, jot down your answers so you get a nice quality answer. There's also a link here to the next slide, which is our warm-up activity. We will be using the Pennsylvania State Standard website this week because vocabulary and content area learning both are dependent upon the grade level that you're teaching. So you want to know what is in the curriculum for the grade that you hope to teach. That's one thing that you're going to do is check out this Try It Out video. It'll show you how to use the Pennsylvania State Standards for science, social studies, or health. Also, the website is constantly changing. So if the video doesn't quite match what you see, they're constantly updating the content area standards just because the changes to Common Core, Science, Social Studies, and Health were the last to get integrated. Also, you may choose art, music, physical education. So if you can't find a great standard for Science, Social Studies, or Health, branch out within one of the other content areas, as well as math. Our first topic is what is vocabulary, and this will be really going through the concepts necessary to teach students vocabulary skills effectively. We have a couple slides to read. We have a story impression, and a story impression is a strategy that you would use if you were teaching vocabulary to your own students, where you give them a list of words, and this can be for a fiction text or a nonfiction text, and you make them link them together to make a story. So I've given you a list of words that we're going to be working through this week. I want you to make a story using those words and then see if you use the words correctly. We have different kinds of vocabulary, and one of the kinds of vocabulary we have is called our academic vocabulary. And that has 4 components. You can read through those. And then we're going to learn about the 3 parts of vocabulary knowledge. This podcast will explain this slide to you. Within vocabulary, I want you to think of a cake. There's 3 tiers or levels of vocabulary, and it's important to know what tier we want to select our words from for students. So check out the podcast for more information. Vocabulary also encompasses different types of words, not just new words, but different categories of words. So these are different categories of words, and we have to explicitly teach those categories so students understand the kind of words they're working with. There are 3 videos that'll show you the kind of resources out there to make learning types of words fun. Also, check out this explanation of resources for teaching kinds of words explicitly. There are 4 levels of vocabulary development. You want to make sure you listen to the podcast so you understand those. And then check out the podcast that explains the timeline of how vocabulary develops for young learners. Our second main topic is how do we teach vocabulary? What do we do as teachers? So there's 6 principles that guide instruction. Just a heads up, this will help you answer your journal question this week, and make sure you listen to the podcast for more explanation. This should be something that you connect to. As you listen to the podcast, see if this makes sense for you. Now, this slide's a bit busy. The directions are down the middle. This is going to be a Dropbox activity. These are different activities that you can use in a classroom to teach vocabulary. We have a little sorting activity, so what you're going to do is head into D2L and grab this activity, cut out the bottom, label the pictures of activities, and then watch the video for more answers. Also, just like we've done all semester, you want to use online resources to help you find quality activities, just get ideas. And 3 really great resources for vocabulary are listed here. Click on each one and explore those websites, and then share something on Padlet that you found that you thought was beneficial. All right, so we've hit vocabulary, but part of vocabulary instruction comes from content area learning. This is learning in the areas that are not literacy. So math, social studies, science, health, physical education, music, art. What we want to do as teachers, especially for those main ones, the math, social studies, science, and health, we want to be able to integrate our literacy skills within those blocks of time. Teachers don't have time anymore to spend a lot of time for science, social studies, and health. Math and reading and writing get the main parts of the day. So we want to learn how to pick themes in our classroom that integrates our science, social studies, and health, but also works at the same time on our math, our literacy, and our writing skills. And this is what we do when we do that weekly literature sharing. We learn how to integrate the 2 worlds. So that's what we're going to be talking about for this section. A knowledge rating scale is one of the vocabulary instructional strategies. I'm going to have you try it out on some of the words that we're learning this week. So just do a little bit of a knowledge rating scale, and you can drop this optionally. And then read the story on the side and think about how can this be true. We're going to look at effective teachers of not just reading today, but effective teachers of content, and listen to the podcast for an explanation of this slide. Now you know what content area learning, let's see how we can integrate our 2 worlds. So the learning materials are what are going to bridge your instructional strategies and your theme together. So we're going to learn a little bit about textbooks, because a lot of times the content areas are taught from a textbook. Just let you know, I'm not a fan, but listen to the podcast and I'll tell you all about that. Then we'll talk about trade books. And trade books are what the heart of our semester has been about. How do we integrate real, authentic books? What are the benefits of using trade books? We have a podcast that explains that to you. And then another podcast, how do you choose a good quality trade book? This will be important as you do your children's book list project as well, to really select quality books. Listen to the podcast for more information. A lot of times I'll start my lessons that have to do with math, science, or social studies with a piece of literature. So I have 3 different links and then 3 different Pinterest boards that will have a good selection of quality books for each of these content areas. I want you to browse the resources, and when you find a book or books that you like, post them on Padlet for everyone else to see. Now, how do we use a regular trade book in the classroom to teach vocabulary and to teach our content areas? Listen to the podcast for more information. And then check out my resources. This would be something I would use for literature-based math, which is my favorite way to teach math. So there's a video that will explain that to you. And last, we've got our thematic units, and that's where we tie it all together. So we have some information on planning a thematic unit and a podcast, and then some different activities that you can choose. And this goes back to that anticipation reaction guide that you did. Some of these words may now look familiar, and this will be a little bit of an explanation about each of those. Last but not least, we're going to work on that curriculum alignment project, and there is a project introduction. Check out D2L for the handout and all of the details and due dates, but listen to the video. It will explain it to you, and just make sure that you're picking something that allows you to choose books that are both fiction and nonfiction for this project. These are your weekly assignments. And if you have any questions, as always, let me know. Enjoy the presentation on vocabulary and content area learning.